All right, let's dive into something, well, something kind of wild today. We're looking at one of the most wonderfully strange and fascinating ideas I've seen in the AI world in a long time. It's a project called MemVid, and it's a totally radical take on AI memory that starts with a pretty crazy question. I mean, really think about this for a second. What if your entire AI memory, the whole thing, was just a single video file you could email to someone? No complex cloud database, no servers to manage, just an MP4. Something you could copy, share, and run absolutely anywhere, even if you're completely offline. That's the promise of MemVid. It's a big one.
Okay, so what is this thing really? At its heart, MemVid is an experimental library that does something that sounds totally bonkers. It takes your text, your documents, whatever, and it turns every little piece of it into a QR code. Then, it stitches all of those QR codes together, one after another, frame by frame, into a totally standard video file. And no, this isn't just some weird art project. It's a really clever strategy to create what they call a zero infrastructure or offline-first AI memory. The whole point is, no servers, no complicated setup, just a single file.
You know, the creators have a perfect little tagline for it, the SQLite for vectors. And that just nails it, right? Think about what SQLite did for databases. It took all that power and complexity and stuffed it into a single, simple file anyone could use. Well, that's exactly what MemVid is trying to do for vector databases. It's basically saying, hey, why does powerful AI search have to be so complicated and expensive?
So the big question is, how on earth does this actually work? I mean, going from a bunch of text documents to a searchable video file, it sounds like some kind of tech magic, but it's actually a really clever four-step process. Let's walk through it.
Okay, step one is pretty standard stuff if you've worked with AI. It takes your source documents, text, PDFs, you name it, and breaks them into small, meaningful chunks. Step two, an AI model comes in and generates a vector embedding for each of those chunks. You know, that's just a string of numbers that captures the meaning of the text. But now here's where things get weird. For step three, each original text chunk gets turned into a QR code image. And for the final step, all those QR code images get compiled one after the other into the frames of an MP4 video. And just like that, your database is literally a movie.
All right, so getting the data in is one thing. How do you get it back out? Well, that part is just as clever. When you make a search, your query also gets turned into a vector. The system then looks at this tiny little index file that comes along with the video. This index is basically a map. It says, hey, the answer you're looking for is probably on frame number 87,532. And here's the cool part. Video files are built for this. The system can jump directly to that exact frame in an instant, decode the QR code, and bam, there's your answer. It's way faster and more efficient than you'd think. But, and this is a big but, this is where we run into the central conflict of this whole idea. There's this huge gap between the brilliant claims MemVid makes and the harsh reality of its trade-offs. This is where the story gets really interesting and a little messy. Okay, so the biggest claim, the one that gets everyone's attention, is just audacious. We're talking storage savings of 10 to 100 times compared to a normal vector database. And the logic is actually pretty genius. The idea is that all that incredible video compression technology we've perfected over decades, you know, like H.264, is accidentally perfect for squishing down the blocky, repetitive patterns you find in a bunch of QR codes. And that doesn't just apply to disk space, it applies to RAM too. Get this, one user reported that a job that was eating up over 8 gigabytes of RAM with a traditional cloud database needed only about 200 megabytes with MemVid. That is an absolutely massive difference. And it's because MemVid doesn't need to load the whole giant index into memory. It just pulls what it needs when it needs it right off the video file on your disk. So it's small and it's light on memory, but is it slow? Nope, not at all. Benchmarks are showing it can query 1 million chunks in just 320 milliseconds. That's well under a second. To put that in perspective, that's actually competitive with big-time managed cloud services like Pinecone, which is just incredible for something that's running entirely on your local machine.
Okay, so that all sounds amazing, right? Extreme compression, tiny RAM usage, super fast reads. That's the dream. But here comes the reality of version 1. And it's got some serious issues. First, the data's immutable. That means you can't change it at all. Second, there's zero built-in security. Your data is just out there. And third, video compression can be lossy, which means there's a tiny but very real risk that the compression could create an artifact that makes a QR code totally unreadable. Not great.
And all of that leads to what is probably the single biggest flaw, the real deal breaker for a lot of people. It's a problem called right amplification. And it works like this. Say you need to fix a single typo in one sentence in your entire database. Well, with MemVid v1, you have to re-encode the entire massive video file from scratch. For a big knowledge base, that could take hours. It makes it completely impractical for any data that needs to be updated. Ever.
So, as you can probably guess, the reaction from the developer community was completely split down the middle. On one side, you had people calling it absolute genius. They were just in awe of the creative, out-of-the-box thinking. Who even thinks to use video tech this way?
And then, on the complete other side, you had people calling it absolutely blurst. Blessed and cursed. For them, it's a clever hack, for sure, but it's also a fragile, super complicated solution for a problem that they argue could be solved much more simply. Like, why not just use a compressed SQL file?
But the story doesn't stop there, not by a long shot. The creators know all about these flaws. They've heard the criticism, and they have a seriously ambitious plan to fix pretty much everything. And that brings us to the race for version 2.0.
The first huge step they're taking is a complete rewrite in Rust. Now, that move alone is promising a mind-blowing 150x performance boost in encoding time. But it's not just about speed. Even more importantly, they're swapping out that fragile little JSON index file for a rock-solid SQLite database. That makes the entire system way more robust and reliable from the get-go. And when you look at the roadmap for V2, this is where it gets really exciting, because it's basically a checklist of solutions to every single problem we just talked about. That right amplification issue? They're building a living memory engine to allow real-time updates. The lack of security? They're adding a crypto tier for per-chunk encryption. They're also planning to add support for images and audio, not just text. And they're even working on CDN integration, so you could stream this data right over the web. It's a lot.
Okay, so after all that, where do we stand? Is MemVid just a clever niche tool for a few very specific jobs? Or does this thing have a potential to be a real game changer for how we all build AI?
Right now, today, version 1 is an absolutely brilliant tool for a niche. It's perfect for edge AI. Think running on a device like a Raspberry Pi with no internet connection. It's amazing for shipping a self-contained searchable knowledge base, like a product manual. And it's ideal for archiving huge datasets that you build once and then just need to read from, like a library of research papers.
And if you look at how it stacks up against the competition, you can really see its unique little corner of the world. It isn't a server-based system like Pinecone or Qdrant. It's just a file. And that gives it its killer feature: zero operational overhead. You just have the file. But the price you pay for that simplicity, at least in V1, is that you lose real-time updates and built-in security, things that are totally standard everywhere else. So for now, the verdict is pretty clear. MemVid v1 is an innovative solution for a very specific and very real set of problems. But its potential to break out of that niche and become a truly mainstream game-changing tool, that is 100% dependent on the team delivering on that incredibly ambitious V2 roadmap.
But, even if MemVid itself doesn't become the next big thing, its true legacy might be something bigger. The sheer excitement and debate it's caused is a massive signal to the entire industry. It proves that there's a real hunger out there among developers for AI tools that are simpler, cheaper, and more portable. It's a wake-up call that challenges the assumption that powerful AI has to be insanely complex.
And that really leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? Will MemVid, the project, actually achieve its goal of becoming the SQLite for vectors, a tool that's just everywhere? Or will its true legacy be the idea behind it, the spark that inspires a whole new generation of AI tools that are simpler and more accessible for everyone? It's a fascinating story to watch.